The room was large and stifling, and though it was already 4 o'clock, opening the windows admitted only a gust of hot shrubbery from the park. Daisy went to the mirror and stood with her back to us, fixing her hair.
It's a swell suite,
whispered Jordan respectfully, and everyone laughed.
Open another window,
commanded Daisy.
There aren't any more. Well, we better telephone for an axe.
The thing to do is to forget about it,
said Tom rather impatiently, expressionless.
You make it 10 times worse by crying about it.
He unrolled the bottle of whiskey from the towel and put it on the table.
Why don't you let her alone, old sport?
Remarked Gatsby.
You're the one who wanted to come to town anyways.
There was a moment of silence. The telephone book slipped from its nail and splashed to the floor, whereupon Jordan whispered,
Excuse me.
I'll pick it up. Oh, I got it.
Gatsby examined the parted string, muttered,
Huh.
in an interested way, and tossed the book on a chair.
That's a great expression of yours, isn't it?
Said Tom sharply.
What is?
Oh, that old sport business? Where do you pick that up?
Now see here, Tom.
Said Daisy.
If you're going to make personal remarks, I'm not going to stay here a minute. Call up and order some ice for the mint julep.
The compressed heat exploded into sound, and we were listening to the portentous chords of Mendelssohn's Wedding March from the ballroom below.
Imagine marrying anybody in this heat.
Cried Jordan dismally.
Still, I was married in the middle of June.
Daisy remembered.
Louisville in June. Somebody fainted. Who was it fainted, Tom?
Biloxi.
He answered shortly.
A man named Biloxi. Blocks Biloxi. He made boxes. That's a fact. He was from Biloxi, Tennessee.
They carried him into my house.
Appended Jordan.
Because we lived just 2 doors down from the church. He stayed 3 weeks until Daddy kicked him out. The next day, Daddy died.
After a moment, she added as if she might have sounded irreverent.
There was no connection.
I used to know Bill Biloxi from Memphis.
That's his cousin. I knew his whole family history before he left. He gave me an aluminum putter that I use today.
The music had died down as the ceremony began, and now a long cheer floated in at the window, followed by intermittent cries of, yeah, yeah, and finally by a burst of jazz as the dancing began.
We're getting old,
said Daisy.
When we were young, we'd rise and dance. Remember Biloxi? Jordan warned her. Where do you know him, Tom?
Biloxi?
He concentrated with an effort.
I didn't know him. He was a friend of Daisy's.
He was not.
She denied.
I'd never seen him before. He came down in a private car.
Well, he said he knew you. He said he was raised in Louisville. Asa Bird brought him around at the last minute and asked if we had room for him.
Jordan smiled.
He was probably bumming his way home. He told me he was president of your class at Yale.
Tom and I looked at each other blankly.
Biloxi?
First place, we didn't have any president.
Gatsby's foot beat a short, restless tattoo, and Tom eyed him suddenly.
By the way, Mr. Gatsby, I understand you're an Oxford man.
Well, not really.
Oh yes, I understand you went to Oxford.
Yes, I went there.
A pause. Then Tom's voice, incredulous and insulting.
You must have gone there about the time Biloxi went to New Haven.
Another pause. A waiter knocked and came in with the crushed mint and ice, but the silence was unbroken by his thank you and the soft closing of the door. This tremendous detail was to be cleared up at last.
I told you, I went there.
I heard you, but I'd like to know when.
It was 1919. I only stayed 5 months. That's why I can't call myself an Oxford man.
Tom glanced around to see if we mirrored his unbelief, but we were all looking at Gatsby.
It was an opportunity they gave to some of the officers after the armistice.
He continued.
We could go to any of the universities in England or France.
I wanted to get up and slap him on the back. I had one of those renewals of complete faith in him that I'd never experienced before. Daisy shifted towards the table.
Open the whiskey, Tom.
She ordered.
I'll make you a mint julep. That way you can forget how stupid you sound. Look at the mint.
snapped Tom.
I want to ask Mr. Gatsby one more question.
Go on.
Gatsby said politely.
What kind of a row are you trying to cause in my house anyhow?
They were out in the open at last, and Gatsby was content.
He isn't causing a row. You're causing a row. Please have a little self-control.
Self-control?
Repeated Tom incredulously.
I suppose the latest thing is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from Nowhere make love to your wife. Well, if that's the idea, you can count me out. Nowadays, people begin by sneering at family life and family institutions, and next they'll throw everything overboard and have intermarriage between black and white.
Flushed with his impassioned gibberish, he saw himself standing alone on the last barrier of civilization.
We're all white here.
Murmured Jordan.
I know I'm not very popular. I don't give big parties. I suppose you've got to make your house into a pigsty in order to have friends in the modern world.
Angry as I was, as we all were, I was tempted to laugh whenever he opened his mouth. The transition from libertine to prig was so complete.
I've got something to tell you, old sport.
Began Gatsby, but Daisy guessed at his intention.
Please don't.
She interrupted helplessly.
Please, let's just go.
That's a good idea. Come on, Tom, nobody wants a drink.
I want to know what Mr. Gatsby has to tell me.
Your wife doesn't love you. She never has. She loves me.
At this point, Jordan and I tried to go, but Tom and Gatsby insisted with competitive firmness that we remain, as though neither of them had anything to conceal and it would be a privilege to partake vicariously of their emotions.
Sit down, Daisy.
Tom's voice groped unsuccessfully for the paternal note.
What's been going on? I want to hear all about it.
I told you what's been going on.
Said Gatsby.
Going on for 5 years, and you didn't know about it.
Tom turned to Daisy sharply.
You've been seeing this fellow for 5 years?
Not seeing.
Said Gatsby.
No, we couldn't meet. But both of us loved each other this whole time, old sport, and you didn't know about it. I used to laugh sometimes.
But there was no laughter in his eyes.
To think that you didn't know.
Oh, that's all.
Tom tapped his thick fingers together like a clergyman and eyed Gatsby suspiciously.
You're crazy!
He exploded.
I can't speak about what happened 5 years ago because I didn't know Daisy then. And I'll be damned if I see how you got within a mile of her unless you brought the groceries to the back door. But all the rest of that's a goddamned lie. Daisy loved me when she married me and she loves me now.
No.
Said Gatsby, shaking his head.
She does, though. The trouble is that sometimes she gets foolish ideas in her head and doesn't know what she's doing.
He nodded sagely.
And once more, I love Daisy too. Once in a while I go off on a spree and make a fool of myself, but I always come back, and in my heart I love her all the time.
You're revolting.
Said Daisy. She turned to me and her voice dropping an octave lower filled the room with thrilling scorn.
Do you know why we left Chicago? I'm surprised that they didn't treat you to the story of that little spree.
Daisy, that's all over now.
He said earnestly.
It doesn't matter anymore. Just tell him the truth. That you don't love him. And it'll be all wiped out forever.
She looked at him blindly.
Why? How could I love him possibly?
You never loved him.
She hesitated. Her eyes fell on Jordan and me with a sort of appeal, as though she realized at last what she was doing, and as though she had never, all along, intended doing anything at all. But it was done now. It was too late.
I never loved him.
She said, with a perceptible reluctance.
Not at Capulani?
No.
Not the day I carried you from the punch bowl to keep your shoes dry?
There was a husky tenderness in his tone.
Daisy?
Please, don't.
Her voice was cold, but the rancor was gone from it. She looked at Gatsby.
There, Jay.
She said, but her hand as she tried to light a cigarette was trembling. Suddenly she threw the cigarette and the burning match on the carpet.
You want too much. I
She-
love you now. Isn't that enough? I can't help what's past.
She began to sob helplessly.
I did love him once, but I loved you too.
Gatsby's eyes opened and closed.
You loved me too?
He repeated,
Even that's a lie.
said Tom savagely.
She didn't know you were alive. Why, there's things between Daisy and me that you'll never know. Things that neither of us can ever forget.
The words seemed to physically bite into Gatsby.
I need to speak to Daisy alone.
He insisted.
She's excited now.
Even alone, I can't say I never loved Tom.
She
It
admitted
wouldn't
in a
be true.
tearful voice.
Of course it wouldn't.
Agreed Tom. She turned to her husband.
As if it mattered to you.
She said,
Of course it matters. I'm going to take better care of you from now on.
You don't understand.
said Gatsby with a touch of panic.
You're not going to take care of her anymore.
I'm not.
Tom opened his eyes wide and laughed. He could afford to control himself now.
Why's that?
Because Daisy's leaving you.
Nonsense.
I am, though.
She said with a visible effort.
She's not leaving me.
Tom's words suddenly leaned down over Gatsby.
Certainly not for a common swindler who'd have to steal the ring he put on her finger.
I won't stand this.
Cried
Please,
Daisy.
let's just go.
Who are you anyhow?
Broke out Tom.
You're one of that bunch that hangs around with Meyer Wolfsheim. That much I happen to know. I made a little investigation into your affairs, and I'll carry it further tomorrow.
You can suit yourself about that, old sport.
Said Gatsby steadily.
I found out what your drugstores were.
He turned to us and spoke rapidly.
He and this Wolfsheim bought up a lot of side street drugstores here and in Chicago and sold grain alcohol over the counter. That's one of his little stunts. I picked him for a bootlegger the first time I saw him, and I wasn't far wrong.
What about it?
Said Gatsby politely.
Walter Chase wasn't too proud to come in on this.
And you let him in the lurch, didn't you? You let him go to jail for a month over in New Jersey. God, you ought to hear Walter on the subject of you.
He came to us dead broke. He was very glad to pick up a little money, old sport.
Don't you call me old sport.
Cried Tom. Gatsby said nothing.
Walter could have you up on the betting laws too, but Wolfsheim scared him into shutting his mouth.
That unfamiliar yet recognizable look was back again in Gatsby's face.
That drugstore business was just a small change.
Continued Tom slowly.
But you've got something on that Walter's afraid to tell me about.
I glanced at Daisy, who was staring terrified, and at Jordan, who had begun to balance an invisible but absorbing object on the tip of her chin. Then I turned back to Gatsby and was startled at his expression. He looked, and this is said in all contempt for the babbled slander of his garden, as if he had killed a man. For a moment the set of his face could be described in just that fantastic way. It passed, and he began to talk excitedly to Daisy, denying everything, defending his name against accusations that had not been made. But with every word, she was drawing further and further into herself. So he gave that up, and only the dead dream fought on as the afternoon slipped away, trying to touch what was no longer tangible, struggling unhappily, despairingly, toward that lost voice across the room. The voice begged again to go.
Please, Tom, I can't stand this anymore.
Her frightened eyes told that whatever intentions, whatever courage she had, were definitely gone.
You two start on home, Daisy,
Said Tom.
in Mr. Gatsby's car.
She looked at Tom, alarmed now, but he insisted with magnanimous scorn.
Go on, he won't annoy you. I think he realizes that his presumptuous little flirtation is over.
They were gone without a word, snapped out, made accidental, isolated, like ghosts even from our pity. After a moment, Tom got up and began wrapping the unopened bottle of whiskey in the towel.
want any? Jordan? Nick?
I didn't answer.
What?
Nick?
Want-
No, I just remembered that today's my birthday.
I was 30. Before me stretched the portentous, menacing road of a new decade.